Hey guys, welcome back. In this video I'm going to be trying to mend this quite rare Aria Pro 2 bass pickup from the 80s. It's tricky though, because check it out, it's potted in epoxy. So this is the bass I'm talking about. It's a Aria Pro 2 from the 80s. This guy's got the gold hardware, the black finish. It's very similar to the bass that was played famously by Cliff Burton in those early years of Metallica. This bass has got two pickups. I think Burton's only had the one. The layout on this bass looks fairly quirky, but in function it's actually pretty standard. This is a three-way pickup selector. It's obviously a rotary switch instead of a toggle, and these are simply volume and tone on each pickup. These two switches are series parallel switches. It was very common in the 80s for instruments either to be modded like that, or in this case come from the factory like that. The nice thing about these, of course, is that from the way they were wired, I've been able to make a diagram with the wire colours. We've got orange, red, brown and black, and from the way it's wired I can work out that one coil is brown and orange and the other coil was red and black, and also which is, I guess, the start of the coil and the finish of the coil, with the orange being switched to earth in parallel mode. And also from the other pickup I've been able to work out that the red and black is the north coil and the brown and orange is the south coil. So the red-black coil, you can see, well, it says 0, but what this is showing me is that it's an infinite resistance. And if I do the same on the orange and brown coil, unfortunately, once again, it's an open circuit. Sometimes, it's very rare, but occasionally that might mean simply that there's a break in the wire along the pickup lead. And that's why I've cut this back, just to make sure it wasn't something simple like that. But unfortunately, even with the wires cut back where they are, and really any shorter than this, I wouldn't be able to mend them anyway. So I've cut them back as short as realistically possible, but the pickup is still faulty. So I've got to get this cover off because it's clearly a unique shape. Luckily, polyester and epoxy resins like this do shrink back slightly as the cure. Plus, they don't really bond to plastic very well. And these ABS covers are quite flexible. So I'm going to work the cover and try to kind of peel it off from the hard block of resin that's underneath. Oop. There we go. It's making some crackly noises. Alright, so the cover looks like it's coming off from the sides. Okay. Okay, so the idea here is to just put some pressure on the top with this piece of scrap timber. I'm going to try and control that pressure with a clamp. It sounds quite drastic, but I think if I can flex the top down, that sort of hard lump of epoxy hopefully will release from the top surface. I've got it all the way loose around the edges of the pickup. I'm not sure about these screw hole tubes in the pickup cover, but we'll see what happens. With a dead pickup like this that's epoxied, basically I have nothing to lose, to be honest. So, oh, there we go. Ooh, that feels like it's opened up. Okay, so it feels like it's loose on top, but maybe still binding on these edges. I think I'll push down just there and see how we go. That's because of the angle, it's a little bit awkward, but push down on the edges there. Just keep an eye on how much the cover distorts. Oh, there we go. Try the other side. So once again, I'm just pushing down on this sort of vertical ridge in this pickup cover, hoping to release the epoxy from around these two screw hole. These screw holes run as tubes right through the pickup cover. Oh, there we go. Okay, I reckon it might be loose. Woohoo! All right. Yeah, it's loose. I hope I can get it out though. Look at that. There we go. Nice one. Well, the pickup cover's survived at least. And if I put that on top, and it looks very much like a P-base layout. We've got 2 rows of 4 magnets staggered like that. I think the next step is to heat this and see if I can cut away this epoxy and maybe separate the 2 coils out. Alright, welcome to the Rob Mods headquarters. This is the culinary division. This guy's been simmering away for about 30-40 minutes. Started with cold water and then just gently brought it up. I've got the flame on as low as I can go, and I'm also using this metal thing which I normally use when I cook rice actually. It just keeps the flame off the bottom of the pan. I think if you were doing this without one of these, you would put something underneath the pickup, or maybe even just hang it in the water. The idea is just to gently bring it up and heat it right through to 100°C. So at 100°C, this potting epoxy feels like sort of hard rubber. I'm going to try and slice it down the middle because I know there's 2 coils. Really got to act fairly quickly. As soon as it cools, this will get very hard again. So I'm going to just see how we go. Obviously use a glove. This is not only hot, but you sort of run the risk of cutting yourself. Seems to be coming away. I'm not worried about the wiring. Obviously I've got to redo all that, so if I cut through that, that's too bad. It's kind of what's clearly faulty in the first place. Ooh, that's looking promising. Gee, that's still quite hot. Let me try from the bottom. You often see people say, well, you shouldn't heat magnets because they lose their, or Alnico because it loses its magnetism. Well, at 100°C, that's not going to be an issue. That's talking about much higher temperatures than that. And either way, I can recharge these magnets if I have to. All right. So you can see the epoxy is just like sort of hard rubber. So if you score it, it tends to just peel away. Ooh, just pulled out the lead wire. Hopefully I can still recover the magnet wire. Okay, just going to cut that wire off. Well, so there you go. They go together that way. There's even little registration lugs. And what I thought was something similar to a P-base pickup is actually quite different. It's got coils that run the full width of the pickup, and it looks like there's no magnets in this part of the coil. Okay, let's get these back to the workshop and see if I can make them play again. This is pretty typical of Japanese bobbins of this era. They don't actually have eyelets or anything. They simply solder a length of regular wire to the magnet wire and then wrap them. This interestingly has white wire and black, and both of these are the same. So clearly, I'm thinking they're not actually reverse wound. They are certainly reverse magnetic polarity. But I'm guessing that these pickup leads with the orange, red, brown and black wires were actually soldered to these in here. So with a bit of luck, it's those solder joints that have failed over time and not the ones that connect these wires. So maybe I can just strip these and re-solder. So that's the first thing I'm going to try. Okay, that's no good. That says 20 meg ohms. So that's not right. Let me delve a little deeper, see if we can get these, remove a bit of this tape or something. This might actually need rewinding, but we'll see how we go. Unfortunately, that resistance is just my own body. So I think we've got an open circuit in the coil itself, unfortunately. So I think this guy needs rewinding. So let's hope our luck changes with this other guy. Okay, I'm going to try and shoot this through my magnifier so you can see what's going on. That wire there is clearly the start of the coil. It seems to be coming out from underneath. And that wire there is clearly an outer wrap. I've just tinned both of these and checked it with my meter, and I'm getting a reading of 4K. So I think this coil is actually going to be okay. So I'm just going to tin a small section on the ends of these two leads. I've chosen black and red because that's what the other north coil was wired as. And it's just a matter of rolling this guy around. There's not much to play with, but let's see how we go. It's quite fiddly. I'm just taping those with masking tape. These are going to be repotted once I get them back in the covers. So the masking tape really is just protecting the coils until that happens. I'll just do a quick test on these and make sure it's still 3.96 k ohms. Okay, so there's my pickup rewound. This is the coil I rewound. You can see the two of them sort of sit together like that, and they fit in the pickup covers pretty well. They do move side to side slightly, so I think before I mix up the resin to repot them, I think I'll just tack them in place with a few drops of hot glue. That way they'll be perfectly centered. I've also made sure that the magnetic poles are as they were originally, with like a reverse P arrangement. And I've also checked that both coils give the same deflection with the millivolts range. When I take the screwdriver off the top, they both give a negative deflection, and that means that they'll be in phase when I wire them up. Not sure if I mentioned it, but the other pickup was also faulty. Only one coil was open, the other coil was fine originally. And so I did the same job on it, was able to get them out. This one, of course, the one that I didn't film, came out really easily and quite gracefully. And in fact, I haven't had to rewind either of those coils. Clearly, the problem with one of these coils was in the wiring inside the resin. That's not a bad outcome, really. Taking two epoxy potted humbuckers out of their casings and out of the epoxy, and only having to rewind one of the 4 coils. So I'm pretty happy with that. So I better go ahead and finish these up and get them back in the base. This tin of resin is just under half full, so it's about 100 mils of resin in there. So I'm just going to mix the whole lot up in the tin. So the first thing I'm going to do is just add a bit of black paint tinter, or universal paint tinter, into the resin and stir that through. Really just want to get that nice and black. Alright, that's looking pretty black, but I think I'll put just a little bit more tinter in. This is just glycol-based universal paint tinter. It's what they tint house paints with. Paint stores often sell it in small quantities because painters sometimes need to tweak their colours on the job site. To turn a clear resin black, you really only need a tiny amount. That's probably only 2% by volume. So now I'll put the catalyst in, obviously with 100 mils of resin. If I'm going to a 3% mix, that's 3 millilitres. So I think I'll just measure it with my eyedropper. I've got an eyedropper that has graduations on it. So there's 1 mil, there's 2 mil, and 3 millilitres. I'm just putting some blue tack to hold these level because they have curved tops, and also to keep that lead where I want it to come out. Okay, good old blue tack. What a lifesaver. Alright, she's all back together again. The pickups are installed. I've done the setup work that needed doing. If I'm honest, the base was really quite neglected. The fretboard was really dry. The truss rod and the bridge and everything were all a long way out of adjustment. But luckily these bases were made to really high standard back in Japan in the 80s, and I was able to adjust the truss rod and the bridge saddles and everything and get the base back into shape, and it's actually playing pretty well. It looks like the pots and the switches and the jack and everything are all original, and they still function as well. So I guess it begs the question, why, when an instrument is made so well in the first place, did both the pickups fail? Especially since they were potted in epoxy. And for that, I've got no answer. I really don't know. Perhaps if you've got a bit more experience with these instruments, let me know in the comments. Maybe it's a known fault with them, that the pickups are a little bit suspect. I guess if you do have one of these instruments and the pickups are not working, hopefully the video has given you some hope that they can be repaired or at least rewound. It's not easy, but it can be done. I think we got really lucky though. These pickups, as you saw, were wrapped from the factory before they were potted in epoxy. Without that wrapping, the resin just sort of soaks into all the windings, and there's no way you'll get the coils out intact. You can certainly get the bobbins out though for rewinding, But yeah, I think we got lucky there and only had to, as I mentioned, just rewind the 1 out of 4 coils. So there you go. She's all back together now and hopefully good to rock out for another 35 years or longer. So thanks for watching. Do consider subscribing to the channel if you're new around here. I'd really appreciate that. And I'll see you in the next one.